32 professional nannies fled in 10 months. The last one lasted only 2 hours before tearfully swearing she would never set foot in that penthouse again. But she, a homeless single mother, spending her 19th night in a broken-down car with no heater in the middle of a New York winter, holding her 6-year-old daughter who suffered from severe asthma and a congenital heart defect, made those 3 children sit quietly and eat breakfast like angels. How? With a pancake recipe from a woman who had died, the only person who had ever loved her throughout the 14 foster homes she passed through, before cancer took her away and left her alone in this world. But to understand this story, we must begin on the coldest night of December in New York, the night she almost lost her only daughter. That night was the coldest night of December in New York. Jasmine Hartwell sat curled in the driver's seat of her 1992 Honda Civic, a car she had bought for $300 from a junkyard 4 years ago. The heater had died last winter. She never had money to fix it. She pulled the thin blanket tighter around Lily, who was sleeping in the back seat. The little girl's breath came out in small white puffs, visible in the freezing air. Jasmine could feel the cold seeping through the cracked windows, through the worn seats, through her bones. 8 degrees below zero. The weatherman had called it the coldest night of the year. Jasmine checked her phone. The screen glowed weakly in the darkness. 2:43 in the morning. 8% battery. She did not dare turn on any lights. Did not dare start the engine to warm the car. The gas tank was nearly empty. Whatever fuel remained had to last until she figured out what to do next. Through the fogged-up window, she could see the faint yellow glow of the Walmart sign. It cast ghostly shadows across the cracked ceiling of the car, dancing like phantoms in the night. This was the 19th night they had slept in the car. 19 nights since the landlord threw their bags into the hallway. 19 nights since he looked at her with contempt and told her he was done waiting for 3 months of unpaid rent. 19 nights of parking behind grocery stores and gas stations, praying no one would knock on the window and tell them to leave. Jasmine reached into her pocket and pulled out what remained of their money. $3.47. Not enough for a meal. Not enough for medicine. Not enough for anything. She let out a slow breath and leaned her head against the cold window. Her eyes drifted down to her left wrist, where a thin scar ran across the skin. Faded now, but still visible if you knew where to look. That scar was 2 years old, from the night she had swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills, wanting everything to end, wanting the pain to stop, wanting to finally rest. But Lily had cried. Lily, only 4 years old then, had woken up crying in the middle of the night. And that sound, that small, desperate sound, had pulled Jasmine back from the edge. She had forced herself to vomit, forced herself to stay awake, forced herself to live, for Lily. Only for Lily. Jasmine looked at her daughter sleeping in the back seat. So small, so fragile, so completely dependent on a mother who had nothing left to give. She thought about Grace. Grace, the only foster mother who had ever loved her. The only one out of 14 homes who had looked at the angry, broken child. Jasmine had been and seen something worth saving. Grace had taught her how to cook, had taught her how to breathe when the panic came, had taught her that she deserved to be loved, even when the whole world said otherwise. And Grace had given her a pancake recipe. Pancakes are not just food, Jasmine, Grace used to say. They are love you can taste. Grace had died of cancer when Jasmine was 16. Died before Jasmine could say goodbye. Died before Jasmine could thank her for being the only light in 18 years of darkness. Now Jasmine was 27, homeless, broken, holding her sick daughter in a frozen car behind a supermarket. But she was still alive, still fighting, still remembering Grace's voice, telling her that she deserved to be loved. Jasmine wiped the frost from the window and looked up at the sky. No stars tonight, just endless black. I do not know how much longer I can do this, Grace, she whispered. But I will not give up, not yet, not while Lily needs me. In the back seat, Lily stirred. Her small chest rose and fell with an uneven rhythm. And then the wheezing began. The wheezing grew louder. Jasmine spun around instantly, her heart slamming against her ribs. In the darkness of the back seat, Lily was awake. Her small body was trembling. Her chest heaved up and down with rapid, shallow breaths. Her lips were turning blue. An asthma attack. The worst one yet. Jasmine lunged for her bag, tearing through everything inside. Clothes, papers, empty wrappers. Her fingers searched desperately for the one thing that could save her daughter. The inhaler. She found it at the bottom, grabbed it, shook it hard. Empty. The inhaler had run out 5 days ago. Jasmine had tried to ration it, using only 1 puff instead of 2 each time, hoping to stretch it until she could afford a new one. But now there was nothing left. Just an empty plastic tube that mocked her with its silence. Mommy. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Each word came out like it was being squeezed through a closing door. "Mommy, I cannot breathe." Jasmine climbed into the back seat and pulled her daughter close. She could feel Lily's heart racing against her chest. It could feel the small body struggling for every breath, could feel the terror radiating from her child like heat from a fever. "Listen to me, baby," Jasmine said, fighting to keep her voice calm. "We are going to breathe together, okay? Just like I taught you. Just like Grace taught me." She remembered Grace's hands on her shoulders. Grace's voice, steady and warm, guiding her through her own panic attacks as a child. "Breathe in slowly," Jasmine whispered. "Through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Lily tried. Her small nostrils flared as she struggled to pull air into her lungs. "Good girl. Now breathe out. Slowly. Through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. The air came out in a thin, rattling wheeze. "Again, baby. Breathe in." They repeated the cycle. Again, and again, and again. But the wheezing did not stop. Lily's face was pale now, almost gray in the dim light from the Walmart sign. Her fingers clutched Jasmine's arm so tightly that her nails left marks. "Mommy, it hurts." Tears streamed down Jasmine's face. She wiped them away quickly. She could not let Lily see her cry, could not let her daughter know how scared she was. "I know, baby. I know it hurts. But you are doing so good. You are so brave. Just keep breathing with me." 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. The attack was not getting better. Jasmine looked at her phone. 2:47 in the morning. 3% battery now. She knew what she had to do. Knew the price she would have to pay. The hospital would treat Lily. They had to. It was the law. But afterward would come the bills. Thousands of dollars she did not have, added to the mountain of debt already crushing her. Her medical debt was already over $50,000 from previous visits. Each trip to the emergency room was another chain around her neck, another weight dragging her deeper into a hole she could never climb out of. But if she did not take Lily right now, she could not finish that thought. Could not let her mind go to that dark place. Money could be owed. Bills could wait. Debt could grow. But her daughter could not be lost. Jasmine wrapped Lily in the thin blanket and carried her to the front seat. She placed her gently in the passenger side and buckled her in with shaking hands. "Hold on, baby," she whispered. "Mommy is taking you to the hospital. You are going to be okay. I promise. You are going to be okay." She turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then finally roared to life. Jasmine pulled out of the parking lot and drove into the frozen night. Her daughter gasping beside her, her heart breaking with every breath. 15 minutes later, Lily lay in the emergency room with an oxygen mask covering her small face. Jasmine sat beside the bed, gripping her daughter's tiny hand as if letting go would mean losing her forever. The monitors beeped in a steady rhythm. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, sharp and cold. Lily's breathing had finally stabilized. The color was returning to her cheeks. Her eyes were closed now, exhausted from the attack that had nearly taken her. Jasmine watched her daughter sleep and felt something inside her chest slowly unclench. She was alive. Lily was alive. For now, that was enough. A nurse approached with a clipboard thick with papers. "Miss Hartwell, I need you to sign these." Jasmine took the clipboard without looking at it. She already knew what it was. Consent forms, payment agreements, promises to pay bills she could never afford. She signed her name at the bottom of each page. Did not read a single word. The numbers did not matter anymore. Whether she owed $50,000 or $100,000, the result was the same. She would never be able to pay it back. Money could be owed. Her daughter could not be lost. An hour later, the doctor came. He was a tired man in his 50s with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. He pulled a chair beside Jasmine and sat down heavily, like a man about to deliver news he wished he did not have to give. "Miss Hartwell, the asthma attack is under control now. Lily is stable." Jasmine nodded, waiting for the word that always came after good news, the word that turned hope into despair. But there it was. "But we ran some tests, and I am concerned about her heart." The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. "The congenital defect we diagnosed last year has progressed. Her heart is weaker than it was 6 months ago." Jasmine's grip on Lily's hand tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means she needs surgery, a valve repair procedure. Without it, her heart will continue to deteriorate." "When?" "Within 6 months. Ideally sooner." Jasmine closed her eyes. She already knew the answer to her next question, but she asked it anyway. "How much?" "The surgery itself, plus hospital stay and recovery. Approximately $200,000. $200,000. The number hit her like a physical blow. $200,000. She did not have $200. She did not have $20. She had $3.47 in her pocket and a car that was running on fumes. There are payment plans, the doctor said gently. Financial assistance programs. We can connect you with a social worker who can help you explore your options. Options. As if there were options for a homeless woman with no job, no savings, and a mountain of debt already crushing her. Jasmine nodded because she did not trust herself to speak. The doctor patted her shoulder and walked away, leaving her alone with her sleeping daughter and her impossible situation. 4 a.m, Lily was finally resting peacefully, her small chest rising and falling beneath the thin hospital blanket. Jasmine sat in the hard plastic chair beside her bed, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what to do next. Her phone buzzed weakly. 3% battery. Without thinking, she opened a job search app. Her fingers scrolled through listings in quiet desperation. Waitress positions paying minimum wage. Cashier jobs with hours she could not work. Cleaning gigs that were temporary and unstable. Then she stopped. One listing stood out from the rest. Live-in housekeeper needed. High pay. Experience with children required. The address was in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The salary listed made Jasmine read it twice, certain she had misread it. 10 times more than anything she had ever earned. More than she could make working 5 jobs combined. Too good to be true. There had to be something wrong. But Jasmine was out of options. Her daughter needed surgery that cost $200,000. They were living in a car in the middle of winter. She had nothing left to lose. Her thumb hovered over the apply button. 2% battery. She pressed it. The screen flickered. The application submitted. Then the phone went black. Jasmine sat in the darkness, holding her daughter's hand, wondering if that single tap had just changed everything, or if it was just another dead end in a life full of them. The next morning, Jasmine charged her phone at the hospital and found an email waiting. Interview scheduled for 5:30 tomorrow morning. Address: Valentino Residence, Upper East Side, Manhattan. 5:30 in the morning. Who interviews a housekeeper at 5:30 in the morning? But Jasmine did not have the right to question it. She only had the right to show up on time and pray this was not a scam. That afternoon, Lily was discharged from the hospital with a new inhaler and a stack of papers about her heart condition. Jasmine held her daughter's hand as they walked out, the weight of $200,000 pressing down on her shoulders like a mountain. She took Lily to Carmen's apartment in Queens. Carmen Reyes was a Puerto Rican woman in her 60s who lived alone in a small apartment 3 blocks from where Jasmine used to live before the eviction. Her husband had passed away 5 years ago. Her children had moved to California. She was the only person left in Jasmine's life who still cared enough to help. She just got out of the hospital, Carmen said, looking at Lily with worried eyes. The little girl sat on the worn couch, clutching her new inhaler like a lifeline. Are you sure you have to go to this interview? Jasmine knelt beside her daughter and kissed her forehead. I do not have any other choice, Carmen. If I do not get this job, I do not know what else to do. Carmen sighed and placed a wrinkled hand on Jasmine's shoulder. You are the strongest child I have ever known. I saw that when you were still young, bouncing from foster home to foster home. You will get through this. Jasmine was not so sure, but she nodded and left. That night, she worked her cleaning shift at an office building in Midtown, 10 in the evening until 4 in the morning, mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, emptying trash cans filled with the leftovers of people who had real jobs and real lives. By the time her shift ended, there was no time to go back to the car, no time to shower, no time to change properly. Jasmine walked to the nearest subway station and found the public restroom. It smelled of urine and mold. The fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. She stood at the sink and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Pale skin stretched too thin over sharp cheekbones. Dark circles carved deep beneath hollow eyes. Hair that used to be thick and brown now hung limp and lifeless, with patches near her temples where it had fallen out from stress and malnutrition. 27 years old, but she looked 40. Jasmine wet a handful of paper towels and wiped herself down as best she could. Face, neck, arms. She scrubbed the smell of bleach and industrial cleaner from her skin until it was raw. Then she changed into the only decent outfit she had left, a white button-down shirt, yellowed at the collar from too many washes. Black slacks that fit too tight because she had lost too much weight in the past few months. She pulled her sleeves down as far as they would go, making sure they covered the scar on her left wrist. She did not want anyone to see the marks of her past, did not want anyone to know how close she had come to giving up. Jasmine looked at herself one more time in the mirror. She did not look like someone who deserved a high-paying job in Manhattan. She looked like someone who had been beaten down by life so many times that she had forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. But she straightened her spine anyway. "You deserve to be loved," she whispered to her reflection, repeating the words Grace had told her 1,000 times. "You deserve to be loved." Then she walked out of the restroom and stepped onto the train heading to the Upper East Side. When Jasmine stepped out of the subway station on the Upper East Side, she felt like she had landed on another planet. Everything was different here. The streets were clean, lined with trees that had been carefully trimmed into perfect shapes. Luxury cars rolled past in a steady stream. Mercedes, BMW, Bentley, each one worth more than she could earn in 10 lifetimes of scrubbing floors. The people were different too. Men in tailored suits walked with purpose, phones pressed to their ears, discussing deals worth more than Jasmine could comprehend. Women in designer dresses carried shopping bags from stores she had never dared to enter. Everyone moved with confidence, with importance, with the quiet certainty that they belonged in this world. And then there was her, Jasmine Hartwell, standing in the middle of all that wealth with the faint scent of industrial bleach still clinging to her hair, her yellowed shirt, her too tight slacks, her shoes with holes in the soles that she had covered with cardboard. She did not belong here. Everyone who looked at her knew it. She could see it in their eyes as they passed. The quick glances, the slight frowns, the way they moved a little to the side to avoid getting too close. Jasmine kept walking. The building she needed was one of the tallest in the area, a tower of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the gray winter sky. She stopped at the entrance and looked up, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. Then she pushed through the revolving door and stepped inside. The lobby was like nothing she had ever seen. Marble floors so polished she could see her reflection in them. Crystal chandeliers hanging from a ceiling that soared 3 stories high. Fresh flowers arranged in vases that probably cost more than her car. A fountain in the center, water trickling over smooth stones, the sound gentle and soothing. This was not a building. This was a palace. Jasmine walked toward the security desk, her worn shoes silent against the marble. The guard behind the desk looked up at her. He was a large man in a crisp uniform, with cold eyes that swept over her from head to toe. His gaze lingered on her yellowed collar, on her cheap shoes, on the dark circles under her eyes. "Can I help you?" His voice was cold. Not a question, a challenge. "I have an interview," Jasmine said, "at the penthouse." "An interview?" He smirked. "For what position?" "Housekeeper." He looked her over again, more slowly this time, like a man appraising a damaged item at a thrift store, deciding whether she was even worth the effort of acknowledging. Jasmine felt her cheeks burn with shame, but she did not look away, did not lower her head, did not shrink. She had endured worse than a contemptuous look. She had endured 6 years of fists and screaming, had endured being burned with an iron, had endured giving birth alone on a bathroom floor while her husband slept in the next room. A security guard's disdain was nothing compared to that. She lifted her chin. The guard picked up his phone, spoke briefly, then hung up. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Private elevator at the end of the hall on the right. Goes straight to the penthouse." Jasmine nodded and walked away without thanking him. She stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut, and she found herself alone in a box of mirrors. Her reflection stared back from every angle. Thin, pale, broken, but still standing. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Jasmine stepped into a completely different world. The penthouse was vast, stretching out before her like something from a dream she had never dared to have. Ceilings soared 5 meters high, supported by walls of glass that offered an unobstructed view of Central Park below. The morning sun streamed through, casting golden light across floors of polished white marble. The furnishings were modern and minimalist, yet so expensive that Jasmine did not dare touch anything. Leather sofas that looked like they had never been sat on, glass tables without a single fingerprint, artwork on the walls that belonged in museums, not homes. She stood frozen at the entrance, afraid that even her breath might damage something. "You must be Jasmine Hartwell." The voice came from her left. Jasmine turned and saw a woman approaching. She was in her late 50s, with salt and pepper hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her face was stern, lined with decades of experience and discipline. She wore a severe black suit that fit her perfectly, and she walked with the posture of someone who had spent a lifetime maintaining control. But when her eyes met Jasmine's, there was something else there. Something beneath the severity, pity, or perhaps understanding. "I am Jasmine," the woman said, "house manager for the Valentino family. I will be conducting your interview today." Jasmine nodded. "Thank you for this opportunity." Jasmine studied her for a long moment. Her gaze moved over Jasmine's yellowed shirt, her cheap shoes, the dark circles under her eyes. But unlike the security guard downstairs, she did not look disgusted. She looked worried. "Come with me," Jasmine said. "There are things you need to understand before we proceed." They walked through the penthouse, past more rooms filled with more luxury than Jasmine had ever seen. A dining room with a table that could seat 20, a library with shelves stretching to the ceiling, a kitchen with appliances that looked like they had never been used. Jasmine stopped at a window overlooking Central Park and turned to face Jasmine. "The position you applied for is not just housekeeping," she said. "Mr. Valentino has 3 sons. Triplets. They are 4 years old." Jasmine nodded. "The listing mentioned experience with children. I have a 6-year-old daughter. Then you understand that children can be difficult." There was something in Jasmine's voice, a warning wrapped in careful words. "Mr. Valentino's sons are not ordinary children," she continued. "In the past 10 months, we have hired 32 professional nannies, child psychologists, behavioral specialists, women with decades of experience working with troubled children." She paused. "Not one of them lasted more than 48 hours. Jasmine blinked. 32 nannies? The most recent one stayed for 2 hours. Jasmine said flatly. She ran out of the building crying and swore she would never return. The one before her lasted 6 hours. Before that, 12. They all say the same thing when they leave, that the boys are uncontrollable, that they need psychiatric help, that no amount of money is worth the chaos." Jasmine swallowed hard. "What did the boys do?" "Everything," Jasmine replied, "screaming, throwing things, climbing furniture, destroying property. They drove one nanny to lock herself in a bathroom for 3 hours until we could coax her out." She looked directly into Jasmine's eyes. "I am telling you this because I want you to understand what you are walking into. This is not a normal job. This is not a normal household. If you want to leave now, I will not blame you." Many candidates have walked away after hearing this. Jasmine thought about Lily in the hospital, about the $200,000 surgery, about the 19 nights sleeping in a frozen car. She had nothing left to lose. "I can try," she said quietly. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "You are certain?" "No," Jasmine admitted. "But I am here, and I will not know unless I try." Something flickered in Jasmine's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Before she could respond, a scream erupted from somewhere deep inside the penthouse. That scream was not a cry for help. It was a battle cry. Jasmine rushed toward the sound, and Jasmine followed close behind. They crossed through a hallway, past more rooms of impossible luxury, until they reached the main living area. Jasmine stopped in the doorway. The room looked like a war zone. Cereal was scattered across the marble floor like brown and yellow snow, crunching underfoot with every step. Milk pooled in uneven white patches on a Persian rug that Jasmine was certain cost more than a year of her old rent. The glass coffee table was covered in sticky handprints. The white leather sofa had been splattered with what looked like orange juice. And the artwork, a massive painting hung on the far wall, a portrait of a woman in a flowing dress that must have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Someone had scribbled across her face with crayons. Wild, angry lines of red and blue and green, slashed back and forth until the woman's features were barely visible. In the middle of all this chaos were 3 identical boys. They had the same curly black hair, the same big brown eyes, the same small faces that might have been angelic if they were not twisted with defiance and rage. But each of them was creating a different kind of destruction. The first boy stood on top of the marble kitchen island, holding a cereal box high above his head. He tilted it slowly, deliberately, pouring a steady stream of cereal onto the floor below. His eyes were fixed on Jasmine, his lips pressed together in a hard line, as if daring her to stop him. "That is Marco," Jasmine shouted over the noise. "The oldest by 5 minutes. He thinks he is the boss." Jasmine looked toward the massive windows, and her heart nearly stopped. The second boy was hanging from the curtains, red velvet drapes that stretched 4 meters from floor to ceiling, swaying dangerously as the child swung back and forth like a monkey in a jungle. The curtain rod was bending under his weight, creaking with each swing. "Luca," Jasmine explained, as if a 4-year-old dangling 4 meters above the ground was perfectly normal. "The middle one. He can climb anything. We have had to lock all the windows because we are afraid he will climb out onto the balcony." A deafening clanging sound erupted from the corner of the room. Jasmine turned and saw the third boy sitting in the middle of a pile of pots and pans. He was banging 2 saucepans together like a drummer, creating a rhythm of pure chaos. With each strike, he screamed at a volume Jasmine did not think a 4-year-old could produce. "And that is Matteo," Jasmine shouted into Jasmine's ear. "The youngest, the quietest, usually, but when he wants attention, The whole building knows it. Jasmine stepped forward and clapped her hands sharply. Boys, stop this right now. Her voice was firm, commanding, the voice of a woman who had spent decades managing households and staff. No one listened. Marco kept pouring cereal, his eyes never leaving Jasmine's face. Luca swung harder on the curtains, laughing wildly. Matteo banged the pots louder, his screams reaching a pitch that made Jasmine's ears ring. Boys, I said, stop immediately. Nothing. The 3 children completely ignored her, as if she were invisible, as if she did not exist. Jasmine turned to Jasmine, defeat written across her face. This is what every morning looks like, she said. We have tried everything. Strict nannies, gentle nannies, nannies with degrees in child psychology, nannies who specialized in behavioral problems. Nothing works. They either drive people insane or make them cry and run away. Jasmine did not respond. She was watching the boys. But she was not seeing what Jasmine saw. She was not seeing 3 monsters who needed to be controlled, 3 problems who needed to be solved, 3 terrors who had defeated 32 professionals. She was seeing something else. She saw Marco, whose eyes were not defiant but testing, watching, waiting to see how the adult would react, checking whether anyone truly cared or just wanted him to be quiet. She saw Luca, climbing so high not because he wanted to destroy anything, but because he wanted to be seen, wanted someone to notice him, wanted someone to look up and worry about him long enough to pay attention. She saw Matteo, banging pots not because he loved noise, but because noise was the only way he knew how to say that he existed, that he was here, that someone should look at him. Jasmine saw herself in those boys, the orphan child who had screamed and broken things in foster home after foster home because no one listened, the child who had been called trouble, a problem, someone no one wanted, until Grace came along and looked past the anger, to see the child inside who was starving for love. Jasmine made a decision. Before Jasmine could stop her, before her own fear could hold her back, she stepped forward. Not running, not hesitating, just walking calmly into the middle of the chaos. Cereal crunched beneath her worn shoes. She could feel Jasmine's shocked gaze on her back, could hear the clanging of pots and the creaking of the curtain rod above. But she did not stop. She walked straight to the kitchen island where Marco stood, cereal box still in his hands, frozen mid-pour. His brown eyes watched her approach with suspicion, with defiance, with the hard shell of a child who had learned that adults only came close to yell. Jasmine did not yell. She did not reach up to grab him, did not order him to come down, did not threaten punishment or consequences. Instead, she sat down. Right there on the cereal-covered floor, she lowered herself until her eyes were level with his, until they were face to face, separated only by the marble island between them. Marco stared at her. This was not what he expected. Every adult before had shouted, had grabbed at him, had tried to force him down with angry words and rough hands, but this woman just sat there, looking at him with calm eyes, and asked a question no one had ever asked him before. You are hungry, are you not? Her voice was soft, gentle, not a demand, not an accusation, just a question. Marco blinked. The cereal box lowered slowly in his hands. You poured the cereal because no one made breakfast for you, Jasmine continued, right? For a long moment, Marco did not move. His small face was frozen in confusion, as if he could not process what was happening, as if kindness was a language he had forgotten how to understand. Then his lower lip trembled. I am hungry, he said. His voice was so much smaller than the screaming from before. So much younger. The nanny from yesterday left before making breakfast. She said we were too bad. She said she would not waste food on monsters. Jasmine felt her heart crack. Behind her, the clanging stopped. She turned her head slightly and saw Matteo watching her. The pots were still in his hands, but they hung motionless at his sides. His brown eyes were wide, fixed on the strange woman who was sitting on the floor talking to his brother. Above, the curtains stopped swaying. Luca had stopped swinging. He clung to the fabric with both hands, looking down at Jasmine with an expression caught between curiosity and suspicion. What about you? Jasmine asked, looking up at him. Are you hungry too? Luca nodded slowly. He did not speak, but his eyes said everything. Jasmine turned to Matteo, the smallest one, the quietest one, the one who had been making the most noise just moments ago. And you? Matteo clutched the saucepans against his chest like a shield. He did not answer, but he did not look away either. What do you want to eat? Jasmine asked, addressing all 3 of them now. If you could have anything for breakfast, what would it be? Silence fell over the room. It was a strange silence, not the tense quiet before a storm, but something softer, something waiting. Marco looked at Luca. Luca looked at Matteo. Some kind of silent communication passed between them, the wordless language that only triplets could understand. Then Matteo spoke. Pancake. It was barely above a whisper, the first word anyone had heard him say all morning. His voice was small and rough, like a door that had not been opened in a long time. I want pancake, he said again, a little louder. Jasmine smiled. It was a real smile, the first one she had felt in weeks, maybe months. I can make pancakes, she said, but I need 3 assistant chefs to help me. Do you want to be chefs? The 3 boys looked at each other again. Another silent conversation. Then Marco put down the cereal box. Luca released the curtain and climbed down slowly, carefully, with the skill of someone who had done it many times before. Matteo set the pots on the floor and stood up. All 3 of them walked to the counter and lined up in front of Jasmine, staring at her with anticipation. Behind them, Jasmine stood frozen in the doorway, mouth open, unable to speak. Jasmine began searching the luxurious kitchen for ingredients. The cabinets were filled with appliances she had never seen before, machines that probably cost more than everything she owned combined. But somewhere in all this excess, there had to be basic ingredients for pancakes. Where is the flour? She asked aloud. Left cabinet, Marco pointed immediately. The top shelf. And the eggs? The big refrigerator, Luca said, already moving toward it. The milk is in there too. I know because I sneak milk at night. Jasmine smiled. Good job. Now, everyone gets a task. She pulled out bowls and measuring cups, arranging them on the marble counter. The 3 boys watched her every move with wide eyes, as if she were performing some kind of magic. Marco, you are the oldest. You will measure the flour. Marco straightened his shoulders, taking the responsibility seriously. Luca, you will crack the eggs. Luca grinned, already reaching for the carton. And Matteo, you will stir the batter. That is the most important job because it makes everything come together. Matteo nodded solemnly, clutching the wooden spoon she handed him like it was a sacred tool. They began. Jasmine guided Marco as he poured flour into the measuring cup. Most of it landed where it should. Some spilled onto the counter in a white cloud. She did not scold him. Instead, she laughed. Flour likes to dance, she said. It never stays where you put it. Marco looked up at her, surprised. A tiny smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Luca cracked the first egg perfectly, dropping it into the bowl with dramatic flair. I am good at this, he announced proudly. The second egg did not go as well. He hit it too hard against the edge of the bowl, and the shell shattered. Yolk and white splattered across the counter, dripping onto the floor. Luca froze, his face crumpling. His eyes darted to Jasmine, expecting anger, expecting shouting, expecting to be told he had ruined everything. Jasmine simply handed him another egg. Even the best chefs drop eggs sometimes, she said gently. That is how they learn to do it better. Try again. Luca stared at her for a moment. Then he took the egg, cracked it carefully, and watched it slide perfectly into the bowl. See, Jasmine said. You are already better. When Jasmine poured the batter onto the pan, a familiar smell filled the kitchen. It hit her like a wave, carrying her back through the years to a tiny kitchen in a foster home in New Jersey, to a woman with gray hair and warm hands, to the only place that had ever felt like home, Grace's kitchen. She could see it so clearly. The cracked linoleum floor, the yellow curtains with daisies printed on them, the old stove that only worked on 2 burners, and Grace, standing beside 14-year-old Jasmine, teaching her to make pancakes. The secret is simple, Grace had said, her voice as warm as the batter sizzling in the pan. A little vanilla, a little brown sugar, and a tiny pinch of cinnamon. Most people do not use cinnamon, but that is what makes the difference. She had looked at Jasmine with those kind eyes that saw past all the anger and fear. Pancakes are not just food, Jasmine. They are love you can taste. When you make them for someone, you are telling them that they matter, that they are worth the time and the effort, that they deserve something warm and sweet. Jasmine blinked, and she was back in the penthouse kitchen. She added a splash of vanilla, a spoonful of brown sugar, and a tiny pinch of cinnamon. Who wants to flip one? She asked. Me! 3 voices answered at once. Jasmine helped each boy flip a pancake, holding the pan handle together with their small hands. Marco went first. He flipped it with too much force, but the pancake landed safely back in the pan. He cheered like he had won a championship. Luca was next. His flip sent the pancake spinning high into the air. For a terrifying moment, it looked like it would hit the ceiling, but it came down perfectly, golden side up. I am a pancake ninja, Luca declared. Then it was Matteo's turn. The smallest boy gripped the handle with both hands. His face was serious, focused. Jasmine could feel his whole body concentrating on this one task. He flipped. The pancake rose in a perfect arc, turned once in the air, and landed in the exact center of the pan. Flawless. Jasmine stared at him. Mateo, that was incredible. You are a flipping genius. Mateo looked up at her, and he smiled. It was a small smile, hesitant, like a flower opening after a long winter, but it was real. The first genuine smile Jasmine had seen on his face in months. Behind them, Jasmine watched from the doorway with tears streaming down her cheeks. 30 minutes later, the kitchen looked like a flour bomb had exploded. Batter was splattered on the counter, the floor, the cabinets. Eggshells littered the marble like fallen leaves. There was flour in Marco's hair, syrup on Luca's cheeks, and a streak of butter across Mateo's forehead. Jasmine's worn shirt was covered in white handprints, where small fingers had grabbed at her for help. But on the table sat a towering stack of golden pancakes. They were not perfect. Some were too thick. Some were too thin. A few had odd shapes that looked more like clouds or animals than circles, but they were golden brown and smelled like heaven, and they had been made by 8 small hands working together. The 3 boys sat around the table, plates in front of them, forks gripped in their fists, and they were quiet. Not the forced silence of children who had been threatened into obedience. Not the tense stillness before another explosion. Just the peaceful quiet of 3 hungry boys eating food they had made themselves. Marco cut his pancake carefully, making sure each piece was the same size before putting it in his mouth. He chewed slowly, savoring every bite. Luca had abandoned his fork entirely and was eating with his hands, syrup dripping down his chin. He did not care. He was too happy to care. And Mateo, the quietest one, ate in small bites. His eyes kept drifting to Jasmine, as if making sure she was still there. As if afraid she might disappear. "This is the best breakfast I have ever had," Marco announced between bites. "Because we made it ourselves," Jasmine said, wiping flour from the counter. "Food always tastes better when you make it with your own hands." "And because you helped us," Luca added, his mouth still full. "The other nannies never let us help. They said we would make a mess." Jasmine looked at the destroyed kitchen and laughed. "Well, you did make a mess. But messes can be cleaned. Memories cannot be unmade." The boys considered this with the seriousness that only children could give to philosophical statements. Then Mateo spoke. "Tomorrow." His voice was barely above a whisper. His fork had stopped moving. His eyes were fixed on his plate, afraid to look up. "Tomorrow, will you make pancakes again?" There was something in his voice that made Jasmine's heart ache, a trembling hope, a fear of rejection, the sound of a child who had learned that good things never lasted. Jasmine walked over to him and knelt beside his chair. "Look at me, Mateo." He raised his eyes slowly, and she saw the fear there, the expectation of disappointment. "If your father lets me stay," Jasmine said softly, "I will make breakfast with you every single day. I promise." "Every day?" Marco asked from across the table. "Every day? You will not leave like the others?" Luca's voice was smaller now, stripped of its earlier bravado. "I will not leave." The 3 boys looked at each other. That silent triplet communication passed between them again. Then Mateo did something unexpected. He reached out and wrapped his small arms around Jasmine's neck, burying his face in her shoulder. He did not say anything. He did not need to. At the doorway, Jasmine stood frozen. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she made no move to wipe them away. In 10 months of chaos, she had never seen the boys like this. Peaceful, happy, loved. The voice came from behind her, deep, cold, filled with an authority that made the air itself seem to freeze. "Who gave you permission to use my kitchen?" Jasmine spun around so fast she nearly dropped the pan still in her hand. A man stood in the doorway. No, not just a man. Something more, something dangerous. He was tall, at least 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled the doorframe. His body was solid muscle, visible even beneath the black shirt he wore casually unbuttoned at the collar. The fabric stretched across his chest with each breath, hinting at power carefully contained. Tattoos crawled up from beneath his shirt, intricate patterns that snaked along his neck and disappeared somewhere beneath the collar. Jasmine caught glimpses of dark ink across his chest through the open buttons, symbols and images she did not have time to study, but enough to know this was not an ordinary man. A thick gold chain rested against his chest, catching the morning light. On his finger, a heavy ring with some kind of family crest. But it was his face that made Jasmine's breath catch. He looked like he had been carved from stone. Sharp jawline, straight nose, cheekbones that could cut glass. His black hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it too many times from frustration or stress. And his eyes, they were black, not dark brown. Black, like staring into a moonless night. There was no warmth in them, no softness, only cold assessment, calculating every detail of who she was in a matter of seconds. This was the face of a man who was not used to being refused, not used to being questioned, not used to seeing anyone in his home that he had not personally approved. Jasmine felt frozen under that gaze, like a deer caught in headlights, like prey that had wandered into the wrong territory. I asked you a question. His voice was even colder now, each word sharp as a blade. Who are you, and why are you in my kitchen? Before Jasmine could find her voice, Marco jumped up from his chair. Dad! The little boy ran across the flour-covered floor and grabbed his father's hand, tugging him toward the table with surprising strength. Dad, you have to try these pancakes. They are the best pancakes in the whole world. Miss Jasmine made them with us. Dante did not move. His eyes remained fixed on Jasmine, that cold gaze unwavering. But something flickered in those dark depths. Confusion. He looked down at Marco, then across the room at Luca and Matteo, who were still sitting at the table. Luca had syrup on his face, and a grin stretching from ear to ear. Matteo was watching silently, a half-eaten pancake on his plate. They were calm. They were sitting still. They were eating breakfast like normal children. Dante looked at the table covered in plates and syrup, at the stack of golden pancakes, at the kitchen that was a disaster zone of flour and batter and eggshells. Then he looked back at Jasmine. His expression did not change. His eyes did not warm, but something shifted in the way he held himself. A slight release of tension in his shoulders, a barely perceptible tilt of his head. I cracked the eggs, Luca announced proudly from the table. I only broke one. I stirred the batter, Matteo added quietly. It was the longest sentence anyone had heard him speak in weeks. Miss Jasmine said, I am a flipping genius. Dante's gaze moved between his 3 sons and the strange woman standing in his destroyed kitchen. For the first time in 10 months, his children were not screaming, not throwing things, not climbing furniture or destroying property. They were eating breakfast, like angels. Dante turned his full attention to Jasmine. Under that gaze, she felt like a specimen being examined under a microscope, every flaw exposed, every weakness measured. He saw the yellowed collar of her shirt, the dark circles under her eyes, the cheap shoes with cardboard covering the holes. He saw a woman who had no business standing in his kitchen. 32 professional nannies could not get my sons to sit still for 5 minutes, Dante said slowly. His voice was controlled, but there was something beneath it. Curiosity, maybe, or disbelief. How long have you been here? Jasmine swallowed hard. About 30 minutes. 30 minutes. He repeated the words as if tasting them. And in 30 minutes, you accomplished what 32 trained professionals could not do in 10 months. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact that he was still trying to process. What did you do? Jasmine met his eyes. It took every ounce of courage she had not to look away from that cold, penetrating stare. I asked them what they wanted, she said simply. Then I listened. Silence fell over the kitchen. Dante studied her for a long moment. His expression revealed nothing. No approval, no dismissal. Just that same calculating assessment, as if he were solving a puzzle he had never encountered before. Then he spoke. You are hired. Jasmine blinked. What? Triple the salary listed in the advertisement. Starting immediately. The words hit her like a wave. Triple the salary. That was more money than she had ever seen in her life. More than enough to start saving for Lily's surgery. More than enough to finally stop drowning. But before the relief could fully settle in, Dante was already turning to Jasmine. Prepare a room for her near my son's quarters. Call my lawyer. I want an employment contract drafted before noon. Mr. Valentino. Jasmine's voice stopped him mid-turn. She could not believe she was doing this. Could not believe she was about to set conditions with a man whose very presence radiated danger and power. A man who clearly was not used to being challenged. But she had no choice. I have one condition. Dante turned back slowly. One eyebrow lifted slightly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. A condition, he repeated flatly. Few people dared to negotiate with Dante Valentino. Even fewer lived to tell about it. Jasmine could feel Jasmine's horrified stare boring into the back of her head, but she stood her ground. I have a daughter, Jasmine said. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. Her name is Lily. She is 6 years old. If this is a live-in position, she has to stay with me. I cannot be apart from her. Dante did not respond immediately. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She felt like he was reading every page of her history in those few seconds of silence. How old did you say she is? 6. And you are raising her alone? Yes. Jasmine did not elaborate, did not want to explain about Derek, about the 6 years of hell, about why she was alone with a sick child and nothing to her name. Dante was quiet for another long moment, then he asked a question that surprised her. What is wrong with her? Jasmine hesitated, but something in his voice told her that lying would be a mistake. She has severe asthma and a congenital heart defect. She needs surgery within 6 months, or her heart will. She could not finish the sentence. The surgery cost $200,000. I do not have it. The kitchen fell silent. Marco, Luca, and Matteo had stopped eating. They watched the exchange between their father and this new woman with wide, curious eyes. Dante nodded once. Bring your daughter here. There is more than enough room. He paused, and something almost human flickered in those cold eyes. My sons could use a sister to play with. We are getting a sister? Luca jumped up from his chair, his eyes shining. A real sister? Her name is Lily, Jasmine managed to say through the tears threatening to spill. She is 6, 1 year older than you. We will protect her, Marco declared with the seriousness of a soldier taking an oath. We are big brothers now. Big brothers protect their sister. Dante watched his sons for a moment, then turned back to Jasmine. Any other conditions? Jasmine knew she was pushing her luck, knew she should stop while she was ahead, but Lily's face flashed in her mind. The oxygen mask, the beeping monitors, the doctor's grim prognosis, the medical bills, she whispered. I have so much debt already. And the surgery. Full health insurance for both of you, Dante cut in. Medication, doctors, specialists. Whatever your daughter needs. He paused. The surgery will be covered. Company expense. Jasmine's knees nearly gave out beneath her. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why would you do that? Dante looked at her with those unreadable black eyes. You take care of my sons. I take care of my people. He turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. When can you start? I need to pick up my daughter. She is staying with a friend in Queens. I will send a car. And just like that, Jasmine's life changed forever. The black Mercedes pulled up in front of Carmen's aging apartment building in Queens. Jasmine stepped out of the car, her legs unsteady beneath her. The morning felt like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Just hours ago, she had been a homeless woman interviewing for a job she did not expect to get. Now she was riding in a luxury car with a private driver, on her way to pick up her daughter and take her to a new home. A real home. Carmen opened the door before Jasmine could knock. Behind her, Lily peeked out with wide, anxious eyes. The little girl's gaze fixed on the expensive car parked at the curb, and her face went pale. Mommy? Her voice was barely louder than a breath. Mommy, what is happening? Are we in trouble? Jasmine's heart shattered at the fear in her daughter's voice. Lily had learned too young that unexpected things usually meant bad things, that strangers meant danger, that change meant pain. Jasmine knelt down and wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her close. No, sweetheart. We are not in trouble. Then why is there a fancy car? Because Mommy found a job. Jasmine pulled back and looked into Lily's eyes. A good job, and we are going to have a place to live. A real home. Lily blinked. A real home? Yes, baby. No more sleeping in the car? Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. Never again. I promise you. Never again. Carmen stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her weathered face. She handed Jasmine the small bag that held everything Lily owned. A few clothes, a worn stuffed rabbit, the inhaler from the hospital. You deserve happiness, child, Carmen said, squeezing Jasmine's hand. Both of you do. Go. Do not look back. On the drive to Manhattan, Lily sat pressed against Jasmine's side. Her tiny hand gripped her mother's fingers and did not let go. She stared out the window in silence as the city transformed around them. The rundown streets of Queens gave way to gleaming towers of glass and steel. Mommy, what kind of job is it? I am going to take care of 3 little boys, Jasmine explained softly. They are triplets, 4 years old, 1 year younger than you. 3 boys? Lily's eyes widened. At the same time? Jasmine smiled. At the same time. You will meet them soon. When the elevator doors opened onto the penthouse floor, Lily pressed herself against Jasmine's leg. Her small body trembled as she took in the vast apartment. The high ceilings, the gleaming floors, the enormous windows. She had never seen anything so big or so beautiful, and it terrified her. Then came the sound of running footsteps. The sister is here. Luca's voice echoed through the hallway, followed by the thunder of 3 pairs of small feet. The triplets appeared at the end of the corridor like a tiny stampede, faces bright with excitement, but they stopped when they saw Lily. She had shrunk behind Jasmine's leg, making herself as small as possible. Her eyes were squeezed shut. Her hands covered her ears. She was waiting for the shouting to start, waiting for the chaos that always followed loud noises. The boys exchanged glances. Then Marco stepped forward, slowly, carefully, the way you approach a frightened animal. "You are Lily, right?" His voice was softer than Jasmine had ever heard it. Gone was the defiant boy who had stood on the kitchen island that morning. In his place was something else, something protective. "Miss Jasmine said you are 6. That means you are older than us." Lily opened one eye, peeking out from behind her mother. Marco's face was serious, more serious than any 4-year-old should be. "You do not have to be scared," he said. "We do not bite, and we will protect you. You are our sister now. Big brothers protect their sister. That is the rule." Luca nodded vigorously. "Yeah, that is the rule. Anyone who picks on you, we will show them." Matteo did not say anything. He just stood there, watching Lily with gentle eyes. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of candy, a butterscotch wrapped in gold foil. He held it out to her like a peace offering. Lily looked at the candy, then up at Jasmine. When her mother nodded, she slowly reached out and took it. "Thank you," she whispered. It was the first thing she had said to the boys, and somehow it cracked the invisible wall between them. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Luca asked eagerly. "We do not have dolls, but we have dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are cool. I have a T-Rex that roars." Lily glanced at her mother again. Jasmine smiled encouragingly. "Yes," Lily said quietly. "I want to see." The boys practically vibrated with excitement. Luca grabbed one of her hands, Marco took the other, and Matteo walked beside her like a tiny bodyguard, close enough to catch her if she fell. As they led her toward the playroom, Marco stopped suddenly and turned around. "We will protect you," he said again, his voice fierce with conviction. "You are our sister now. Nobody hurts our sister." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I have never had brothers before." Luca grinned. "Well, now you have 3 at once. Saves time getting to know them one by one." And for the first time in longer than Jasmine could remember, Lily laughed. That afternoon, the storm arrived without warning. One moment, the 4 children were playing happily in the playroom. Luca was showing Lily his dinosaur collection. Marco was building a tower with blocks. Matteo sat nearby, quietly arranging toy cars in a perfect line. Laughter echoed through the penthouse. For a few precious hours, everything was peaceful. Then everything exploded. Jasmine did not know exactly what triggered it. Maybe Luca grabbed the T-Rex from Marco's hands. Maybe Matteo got pushed when he tried to squeeze between his brothers. Maybe it was simply the exhaustion of a day filled with too many changes, too many emotions, too many new things for small hearts to process. Whatever the cause, the result was unmistakable. All 3 boys erupted at once, like 3 bombs detonating simultaneously. Marco screamed with rage and hurled toys at the wall. Building blocks shattered against the plaster. A stuffed animal hit a lamp, sending it crashing to the floor. His small face was twisted with fury, tears streaming down his cheeks as he grabbed anything within reach and threw it as hard as he could. Luca collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. He pounded his fists against the hardwood, over and over, screaming words that made no sense. His whole body convulsed with each cry, as if something inside him was breaking apart. And Matteo's reaction was the worst of all. He did not scream, did not throw things, did not pound his fists. He simply dropped to the floor in the corner of the room, wrapped his arms around his knees, and cried without making a sound. His entire body trembled violently. His face was buried in his knees. Silent tears soaked through his pants. It was the cry of a child whose pain was too big for words. Lily stood frozen in the opposite corner. Her hands were clamped over her ears. Her eyes were squeezed shut. Her small body shook with a terror that had nothing to do with the present moment. She was remembering Derek screaming, the sound of objects breaking against walls, the nights when she would hide under her bed, hands over her ears, praying for the noise to stop, praying for the monster to go away. Jasmine saw her daughter's face and felt her heart crack. Jasmine rushed to the doorway, her face drained of color. "This is it!" she shouted over the chaos. "This is when they all give up. This is when the nannies run away." Jasmine did not run. She did not shout for the boys to stop, did not threaten punishment, did not try to physically restrain anyone. Instead, she walked into the middle of the playroom, into the middle of flying toys and raw screaming and silent devastation, and she sat down on the floor, just sat there, steady and calm. Like an island in the middle of a hurricane, the chaos continued around her. Marco's screams, Luca's sobs, Matteo's silent trembling, but Jasmine did not move, did not flinch, did not look afraid. She just breathed. In, out, steady as a heartbeat. Jasmine opened her mouth to say something, but Jasmine raised one hand, signaling silence. After a long moment, Lily opened her eyes. She saw her mother sitting calmly in the middle of the destruction, and something in her face shifted. The terror began to fade, replaced by confusion. Slowly, hesitantly, Lily left her corner and crossed the room. She stepped over fallen toys and around sobbing boys until she reached her mother's side. "Mommy?" Her voice was a whisper. "What are you doing?" Waiting for them to finish crying, Jasmine answered softly, pulling Lily down beside her. "Sometimes people need to cry until the tears run out. Our job is just to be here when they do." Lily considered this. Then she curled up against her mother's side and waited too. Minutes passed. The screaming grew quieter. The sobs became hiccups. Marco was the first to notice Jasmine. He stopped throwing things and stared at her. This woman who was sitting calmly in the middle of the mess he had created. She was not yelling. She was not leaving. She was not looking at him with anger or disgust. She was just there. It confused him so much that he forgot to stay angry. Luca stopped pounding the floor. His cries faded to sniffles when he realized no one was trying to force him to be quiet. No one was telling him to stop. No one was saying that boys did not cry. He was allowed to cry, and somehow, that made him not want to anymore. Then Matteo lifted his head. His eyes were red and swollen, his cheeks soaked with tears. He looked at Jasmine as if searching for something. What he found was not anger or disappointment, just calm, just patience, just presence. Matteo was the first to move toward her. He crawled across the toy-littered floor on his hands and knees, climbed into her lap, and curled up like a kitten seeking warmth. Jasmine held him without saying a word. Then Marco came. He sat beside her and rested his head against her shoulder. Then Luca, squeezing into the pile of arms, tears still wet on his cheeks. Lily wrapped her arms around her mother from behind. 5 people sat tangled together in the middle of the destroyed playroom, and no one spoke for a very long time. Dante came home early that evening. Jasmine had called him after the meltdown. Her voice had been strange on the phone. Not panicked, as he had expected, not exhausted or frustrated, but something else, something he could not identify. "You need to come home, Mr. Valentino," she had said. "You need to see this for yourself." He had expected the worst, expected to find his penthouse destroyed, expected to find the new woman crying in a corner like all the others, expected to hear that she had already quit, that she had taken her daughter and fled, that the 33rd nanny had failed just like the 32 before her. What he found instead stopped him in his tracks. The living room was quiet, not the tense silence before an explosion, not the exhausted quiet after hours of screaming, but a peaceful, gentle stillness that Dante had not heard in his home for as long as he could remember. On the large sectional sofa, Jasmine sat with all 4 children gathered around her. Marco and Luca were pressed against her sides. Matteo lay curled in her lap, his head resting against her chest. And Lily, the little girl he had met only that morning, sat tucked under her mother's arm. They were watching a cartoon, something about talking animals on an adventure. Soft giggles rose from the pile of children whenever something funny happened on screen. Luca pointed at the television and said something that made Marco laugh. Matteo's lips curved into a small smile. They looked like a family. Dante stood in the doorway, unable to move, unable to process what he was seeing. These were not the children who had driven away 32 nannies. These were not the monsters everyone said needed psychiatric help. These were just children. Happy, peaceful, loved children. "Dad!" Luca spotted him first. The boy's face lit up like a sunrise. "Dad, you are home. Come watch the movie with us. There is a funny part coming." Dante opened his mouth to refuse. He had work to do, an empire to run, phone calls to return, decisions that could not wait. He was the head of one of the most powerful families in New York. He did not have time to sit and watch cartoons. But before the words could come out, Matteo lifted his head. His youngest son looked at him with those big brown eyes that had been filled with silent pain just hours ago, eyes that rarely met anyone's gaze directly. "Dad." One word. Just one word, but it was the way he said it, soft and hopeful and afraid. Like a child reaching out his hand in the dark, praying someone would take it. Dante walked over to the sofa. He did not know what to do, did not know how to sit. He lowered himself onto the edge of the cushion, stiff as a board, his body rigid with discomfort. He felt ridiculous. A mafia boss sitting on a sofa watching cartoons about talking animals. Then Marco shifted. Without a word, the oldest triplet leaned his head against Dante's arm. Just rested it there, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Luca immediately scooted closer, pressing against his father's other side. "The rabbit is my favorite," Luca whispered loudly. "He is funny, but do not tell Marco. He likes the fox better. The fox is smarter," Marco muttered. And Matteo, still curled in Jasmine's lap, reached out one small hand and wrapped his fingers around Dante's. He did not say anything, just held on. Something inside Dante's chest shifted. It was a strange sensation, like ice cracking after a long winter, like a door opening that had been locked for years. He did not have a name for it, did not know how to describe the warmth spreading through his ribcage, but for the first time in 10 months, he did not think about work, did not think about the empire or the enemies or the endless responsibilities pressing down on his shoulders. He just sat there, surrounded by small bodies and quiet laughter, watching a cartoon he did not understand, feeling his son's tiny fingers wrapped around his own. Jasmine glanced over at him. Their eyes met for just a moment. She did not say anything, did not smile or nod or acknowledge what was happening, but she saw him. And somehow, that was enough. 4 weeks passed like a beautiful dream Jasmine was afraid to wake from. Life in the penthouse had become familiar. Every morning began with pancake breakfasts. Every afternoon was filled with games and lessons and small meltdowns handled with patience. Every evening ended with story time. 4 small heads pressed together as Jasmine read aloud. The triplets had transformed. They still had moments of chaos, still fought and screamed and threw things sometimes. But the episodes were shorter now, less violent, and they always ended the same way, with small bodies curled around Jasmine, seeking comfort instead of destruction. Lily had blossomed too. She no longer flinched at loud noises. She laughed freely, played boldly, and had started calling the triplets her brothers without hesitation. And Dante had changed in ways Jasmine did not fully understand. He came home earlier, ate dinner with the family more often. Sometimes she caught him watching his sons with an expression she could not name. Something soft, something hungry. Everything was peaceful, until Tuesday afternoon of the 4th week. Jasmine was in the kitchen preparing snacks when the front door burst open with a crash that shook the walls. A man stumbled inside. He was covered in blood. Blood on his face, blood soaking through his white shirt, blood running from a wound in his shoulder that left a dark trail across the marble floor. He leaned against the wall, barely able to stand. His eyes were wild with panic as they scanned the room. "Don Valentino," he gasped, his voice raw with pain. "I need to see Don Valentino. Now. They are coming. Costello knows. They know our location." Jasmine stood frozen, a knife still in her hand, unable to process what she was seeing. Jasmine appeared from nowhere. But this was not the Jasmine that Jasmine knew. Not the stern but kind house manager who fussed over the children and made sure everything ran smoothly. This Jasmine moved with a calm that was terrifying. Efficient, cold, the calm of someone who had handled situations like this before. Many times, she grabbed a towel from a drawer and pressed it against the man's shoulder wound without flinching at the blood that soaked through immediately. "Can you walk?" Jasmine asked. Her voice was flat, professional. The man nodded weakly. "Mr. Valentino is in his office. Come." She helped him down the hallway, leaving a trail of red droplets on the white marble. A door opened, closed, and then silence. Jasmine stood alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Don Valentino. The words echoed in her mind. She knew that title, had read enough books, seen enough movies, heard enough whispered stories growing up in foster homes near the wrong neighborhoods. Don. The title of an Italian mafia boss. All the pieces began falling into place. The penthouse that was too luxurious, too excessive for even the wealthiest businessman. The guards she had noticed in the lobby, in the hallways, always watching. The way people looked at Dante with fear and respect in equal measure. The phone calls in Italian he took behind closed doors. The visitors who came late at night and left before dawn. She was living in the home of a mafia boss. She was raising the children of a mafia boss. She had let her daughter move into the house of one of the most dangerous men in New York. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Jasmine looked up. Dante stood in the kitchen doorway. His white shirt had spots of blood on the cuffs. His face was stone, unreadable as always. But his eyes met hers, and in that moment, she saw that he knew that she had seen the bleeding man, knew that she had heard the words, knew that she understood exactly who he was and what he did. The silence between them stretched like a wire pulled too tight. "Where are the children?" His voice was controlled, careful. "In the playroom with Lily. They did not see anything." "Good." Another long pause. Then Dante spoke again, his voice low and flat. "Come to my office. We need to talk." Jasmine followed Dante into his office. The room was dark, lit only by a single lamp on the massive desk. The walls were lined with books and paintings. A window overlooked the city lights below. The blood from the wounded man had been cleaned from the floor, but Jasmine could still smell it. Copper and iron, the scent of violence. Dante closed the door behind them and turned to face her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there, separated by a few feet of space and a truth that could not be taken back. "You know now," Dante said finally. "Not a question. You are Mafia." Jasmine's voice was steadier than she expected. "A Mafia boss, Don Valentino." "Yes." He did not deny it, did not make excuses. "The Valentino family is one of the most powerful families in New York. I am the one who leads it." He watched her carefully, waiting for her reaction. "Does that scare you?" Jasmine considered the question. It should have scared her. Any normal person would have been terrified, would have grabbed their child and run out the door, would have called the police, would have done anything to escape from the home of a criminal. But Jasmine was not any normal person. "It should scare me," she said slowly. "But honestly, I spent 6 years living with a man who made me afraid every single day. And he was not Mafia. He was not a crime boss or a killer." She paused, meeting Dante's dark eyes. He was just an ordinary man with fists and uncontrolled rage. Something flickered in Dante's expression. "Your ex-husband, Derek." The name tasted like poison in her mouth. "We met when I was 19. I had just aged out of the foster system. I had nothing, no family, no money, no one who cared whether I lived or died." She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights, finding it easier to speak when she did not have to meet his eyes. He was 5 years older, handsome, charming. He said all the right things, told me I was beautiful, told me I deserved to be loved, told me he would take care of me forever. Her voice grew distant, as if she were talking about someone else. "I thought it was love. I did not know it was a trap." "What did he do to you?" The question was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something dangerous. Jasmine took a slow breath. "At first, it was just words. He told me I was stupid, useless, that no one would ever love an orphan like me except him. I believed it because I did not know any better." She turned to face Dante. Then words became punches. Punches became kicks. Kicks became 6 years of hell. Her hands moved to the buttons of her shirt. Slowly, she undid the top 2 and pulled the fabric aside, revealing her left shoulder. A scar ran from her shoulder down across her back. Thick, ugly, the kind of scar that never faded. "He pushed me through a glass door," Jasmine said flatly. "The glass shattered. I stitched the wound myself because he would not let me go to the hospital. He was afraid they would ask questions." She pulled up her sleeve, showing another scar on her forearm, circular, the size of a coin. "Cigarette burns. When dinner was not ready on time." She lifted the hem of her shirt slightly, revealing a jagged line across her hip. "He stabbed me with a kitchen knife when I tried to run away the first time." Dante's jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I was pregnant twice," Jasmine continued, her voice hollow. "I lost both babies. The first time, he kicked me in the stomach because the food was too salty. The second time, he pushed me down the stairs because I looked at him wrong." She let her shirt fall back into place. "Lily was my 3rd pregnancy. I hid it as long as I could. When I went into labor, he would not let me go to the hospital. He said I was faking it for attention. I gave birth alone on the bathroom floor while he slept in the next room." The silence that followed was absolute. Dante stood motionless, but something had changed in him. His eyes, usually cold and unreadable, had darkened to something Jasmine had never seen before. Something that looked like barely contained violence. "Where is he now?" His voice was low, deadly. This was not the voice of a father or an employer. This was the voice of Don Valentino, the voice of a man who could make people disappear. "I do not know," Jasmine answered. 2 years ago, he drained our bank account and vanished. No note, no warning. He just disappeared and left me with $85,000 of debt in my name. And you have not seen him since?" "No." Dante stepped closer. His hand reached out, fingers brushing lightly against her shoulder where the scar began. His touch was impossibly gentle. The hands of a killer, soft as a whisper. If he comes back, Dante said, each word heavy as stone. If he shows up anywhere near you or Lily, you tell me immediately. Do you understand? Jasmine looked into his dark eyes. Why? To make sure he never has the chance to touch you again. She understood exactly what he meant. And strangely, she was not afraid. For the first time in her life, she felt protected. 8 weeks had passed since Jasmine walked into the Valentino penthouse. 8 weeks of pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories. 8 weeks of watching 3 wild boys transform into something softer. 8 weeks of seeing her daughter laugh without fear. 8 weeks of catching Dante's eyes across the dinner table and feeling something she was afraid to name. It was a Saturday afternoon when the nightmare found her again. Jasmine had taken the children to Central Park. The spring air was warm, and the 4 of them raced across the grass like puppies released from a cage. Marco chased Lily around a fountain. Luca climbed a tree while Jasmine watched nervously from below. Matteo collected leaves and flowers, arranging them in patterns only he understood. 2 of Dante's guards followed at a discreet distance. Jasmine had grown used to their presence. They were shadows that never spoke, never interfered, just watched. She was sitting on a bench, laughing at Luca's acrobatics, when a voice spoke from behind her. Jasmine. The blood drained from her face. She knew that voice, had heard it in her nightmares for 8 years, had heard it whisper threats and scream insults and growl demands she could never refuse. I have been looking everywhere for you. Jasmine turned slowly. Derek stood there. He looked different, thinner. His hair was longer and greasy. His clothes were wrinkled, like he had slept in them for days. But his eyes were the same, those cold, calculating eyes that had watched her bleed on the bathroom floor and felt nothing. Derek. Her voice came out as a whisper. He smiled, that charming smile that had fooled her when she was 19, that smile that hid the monster underneath. Miss me, baby? He stepped closer. You are a hard woman to find, but I have my ways. Always have. Jasmine stood up, positioning herself between Derek and the children. What do you want? What do I want? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. I want what is mine. I heard you landed somewhere nice. Rich family, big penthouse, plenty of money. His eyes swept over her clothes. Nicer now than anything she had owned before. Clean, well-fitted. The clothes of someone who was taken care of. You owe me, Jasmine. After everything I did for you. After all those years I put a roof over your head. You beat me. The words came out flat. Dead. You nearly killed me. You left me with nothing. Do not be dramatic. He waved a hand dismissively. That was just how we were. Passionate. You know you liked it. He stepped closer, and Jasmine stepped back, but her legs hit the bench, and she had nowhere to go. Derek grabbed her wrist. His fingers closed around the exact spot where his cigarette burns had left scars. The grip was tight, painful, familiar. You are going to give me money, he said, his voice dropping to that quiet tone she remembered. The tone that came before the violence. A lot of money, or I will tell your new employer all about you. About what a worthless piece of trash you really are. See how long they keep you then. Let go of me. Or what? You will call the police? He laughed. We both know you will never do that. You are too scared. Too weak. You always were. Let her go. The voice was small but fierce. Derek looked down. Marco stood in front of Jasmine, his tiny body positioned like a shield. His hands were clenched into fists. His jaw was set with determination that should not have been possible in a 4-year-old. You do not touch our mom, Marco said. Let her go. Now. Derek stared at the child, then burst out laughing. Your mom? That is precious. She is not your mom, kid. She is just the help. She is our mom. Luca appeared at Marco's side. And you need to leave. Matteo did not speak. He just stood behind his brothers, holding Lily's hand, his face pale but resolute. Derek's smile faded. Listen here, you little. He never finished the sentence. 2 large hands grabbed him from behind and yanked him away from Jasmine. Dante's guards materialized like ghosts, one pinning Derek's arms behind his back while the other stood between him and the children. Get off me, Derek struggled. Do you know who I am? I will sue you. I will. Leave now, one guard said calmly. And do not come back. They released him with a shove that sent him stumbling. Derek caught his balance and turned back, pointing at Jasmine with a shaking finger. This is not over. You hear me? I will be back. You cannot hide from me forever, Jasmine. You belong to me. Then he disappeared into the crowd. That night, after the children were asleep, Jasmine told Dante everything. He listened without interrupting. His face remained stone, but his eyes grew darker with every word. When she finished, He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. He spoke in rapid Italian. His voice was cold, colder than Jasmine had ever heard it. Each word was clipped and precise, like bullets being loaded into a chamber. She did not understand the language, but she understood the tone. The call lasted less than 2 minutes. When he hung up, Dante looked at her with those dark eyes. "It is handled." 1 week later, Jasmine received news through channels she did not ask about. Derek Hartwell would not be coming back. Ever. No details were given, no explanations offered. Jasmine did not ask questions, did not want to know. She only knew one thing. The nightmare that had haunted her for 8 years was finally over. And for the first time since she was 19 years old, she felt truly free. 1 year later, it was a Tuesday morning, and Jasmine stood in the familiar kitchen making pancakes. The same kitchen where she had first won the hearts of 3 wild boys. The same stove where she had taught them to flip batter and crack eggs. The same marble counter that had been covered in flour 100 times since that first chaotic morning. But everything else had changed. Around the dining table sat 5 children. Marco, now 5 years old, sat properly in his chair like a true eldest brother. He was helping Valentina hold her bottle, his face serious with concentration, as he made sure not a single drop spilled. Luca, still the most energetic of the triplets, never stopped talking. He was telling a story about a dream he had, complete with wild hand gestures and sound effects that made everyone laugh. Matteo, the quietest one, was no longer silent. He still spoke less than his brothers, but the smile on his face appeared far more often now. He was carefully cutting his pancake into perfect squares, just the way he liked them. Lily, now 7 years old, had become the responsible big sister she was always meant to be. She was cutting pancakes into tiny pieces for Valentina, explaining to the baby what each food was, even though Valentina was too young to understand. And Valentina, 6 months old, with dark eyes just like her father and a smile that lit up the room, she sat in her high chair, giggling every time her siblings made faces at her. The newest addition to their family, the child of Dante and Jasmine's love. Dante sat at the head of the table, coffee in hand, but his eyes never left his family. The man who had once been called the most feared mafia boss in New York now spent most of his time at home, eating breakfast with his children, reading bedtime stories every night, learning how to braid Lily's hair, changing diapers without complaint, learning how to be the father he never knew he could be. Jasmine poured the last of the batter onto the pan, watching the familiar bubbles form on the surface. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air. Grace's recipe, the recipe that had started everything. Her mind drifted back. 1 year ago, she saw herself huddled in a broken-down car behind a Walmart, holding Lily through an asthma attack, watching her daughter's lips turn blue. She saw herself signing hospital bills she could never pay. She saw herself wiping down her body with wet paper towels in a subway bathroom, praying for a miracle. She saw a woman who had nothing, who was nothing, who believed her life was over. And now she stood in a warm kitchen, surrounded by 5 children who called her mom. Now she wore a ring on her finger, placed there by a man who loved her more than she ever thought possible. Now her daughter had a healthy heart, the surgery paid for by a family that had claimed them as their own. Now she had everything she never dared to dream of. "What are you thinking about?" Dante's voice came from behind her. She had not heard him approach. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. Jasmine leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. "I was thinking about last year," she said softly. "About the night I almost lost Lily. About sleeping in that frozen car. About thinking that was the end." Dante pressed a kiss to her hair. "And now?" Jasmine turned in his arms, looking up at the face of the man who had changed everything, the man who had seen her at her lowest and lifted her up, the man who had given her a family when she thought she would always be alone. "Now I know," she whispered. "My life was not ending that night. It was just beginning." From the table, Luca shouted, "Mom! Dad! The pancakes are burning!" Jasmine laughed and rushed back to the stove while Dante returned to his seat. The triplets argued about who got the biggest pancake. Lily mediated with the patience of a saint. Valentina banged her tiny fists on her high chair, demanding attention. It was chaos. Beautiful, wonderful, perfect chaos. And Jasmine would not trade it for anything in the world. This story reminds us of something important. Family is not always the people we are born with. Sometimes, family is the people who choose to stay. The people who see us at our worst and love us anyway. The people who hold our hands through the storms and celebrate with us when the sun comes out. Jasmine taught us that strength is not about never falling down. It is about getting up every single time. It is about protecting the people we love, even when we have nothing left to give. And Dante taught us that it is never too late to change, never too late to become the person our children need us to be, never too late to open our hearts to love. Sometimes, the greatest miracles come from the simplest things: a pancake recipe from someone who loved us, a moment of patience with a struggling child, a decision to stay when everyone else would run. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our daily stories. Press the like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear that second chances are real. We would love to know how you felt about Jasmine and Dante's journey. Have you ever faced impossible odds and found hope in an unexpected place? Do you believe that family is a choice we make every day? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single comment, and we treasure the stories you share with us from the depths of your hearts. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We wish everyone watching this video good health, a joyful life, and peaceful days filled with love and laughter. Remember, no matter how dark the night seems, the morning always comes. Sometimes miracles arrive in the simplest forms, like a warm breakfast or someone willing to listen. Goodbye for now. We will see you in the next video.